Thank you so much, Kanjan. To begin, I do want to say a few words. I think that no day passes without thinking about people who are suffering in Ukraine. And I do want to put all my efforts into bringing peace in the world and hoping that people who are suffering are come out of their suffering. So I would like to say that my work, this presentation that I'm giving, I hope that that is also a means of change that brings peace to people in Ukraine and Russia. So with that, good evening and thank you, Kanjan, for introducing me. I would share my PowerPoint. So we have that. Is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
yes.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, here we are to, we have met, we have come together and to talk about Kilns. And I do want to make sure that I keep admitting people, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to make us, give you a context of where I am right now, which is in the Northern American continent, in the western part of Midwest of United States is Utah, which is a state, and Utah State University is 90 miles north of Salt Lake City, which is the capital of Utah. So just in the context of national parks, if you kind of are someone who's interested in that, Yellowstone is 6 hours north of where I live, and Arches National Park or the Zions is 6 hours south of where I live. So that's where I am in Utah, in the US, surrounded by Rocky Mountains and desert climate. And on the left, you see—
Just a second, Antra, one moment.
Yes.
Could all participants, I would request that could you turn off your videos and your microphone as talking. Later on, when we will have the question answer session, you can turn it on, please. Thank you.
And Antra, can
Yes.
you make, is it possible to make me co-host so then I can let people in? Pata nahi wo hoga ki nahi, but
Yes.
otherwise
Do
you
that
will be
then.
during the talk.
Yes.
You have to also check.
Yes. Give me 1 second and I should. I may have to stop sharing screen for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to figure that out right this second. I'm so sorry.
Doesn't matter right now. Let's just continue with the presentation. It doesn't matter at this
Then you
moment.
can check.
Yeah. So on the left is I am side stoking this wood kiln, which is an 80 cubic feet kiln, and that's the chamber that you see where I'm putting in wood. And on my left is the firebox, and on my right is the chimney. So basically that's the kiln that I'm firing. And I think that I would begin with giving you a small journey of how, I've been creating and making works clay. So I thought that I would begin with sharing one of my most recent work, which embraces or which basically is an example of all that I know with working with clay and doing firings. So I think that this is my most recent work that I done. And as mentioned, I started my ceramic work in Golden Bridge pottery. But before that, I had
Antra, can you put it on a full screen mode? Is it possible for you? Maybe press the green one and see if it's going on a full screen mode.
Yeah, if I do that, then I will not be able to admit people.
Ah, okay. All right. Continue.
Okay. Yeah, what are you able to see? Are you able to see my PowerPoint?
We are able to see your we are able to
Desktop.
see the desktop. Yes.
Okay. Now you're able to see it better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sorry
Thank you.
about that.
Thank you.
Yes. So if you know about kilns a little bit, this is the Upma kiln at Golden Ridge Pottery, and that's where I did most of my work firings. But I started saying about the fact that I did many gas kiln firings in mural design department at MS University, Baroda. Jayanti Rabaria sir was my teacher, and Jyotsna Bhatt ma'am would be teaching in the pottery department, and mural design came in way of her leaving from the campus. So many a times she would stop by and give me critiques about my work. So I felt like I got mentorship from both of them. Firing those gas kilns was a steep learning curve for me. But the most interesting thing that I remember was when Abhi Patwardhan was a pottery student and was firing the wood kiln in Baroda. And we all just like went and saw, you know, what he was doing. And he let us look into the kiln through the peephole. And we were 4-5 of us. And he said, well, don't spend too much time in front of the kiln, keeping the peephole open. And we were like, why? Well, he's like, well, my pots will not come out as good. So, you know, we just thought that that was a rule at that time. But I will describe later on in my talk how it was so important that to maintain a certain atmosphere in the kiln, you would not spend a lot of time keeping the peephole open. Anyway, this is the kiln that I fired many times with my work in Golden Bridge Pottery. And I would say that we would start putting in wood in this hole. Are you able to see my cursor here on the picture? Yes, no?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So that's where we would start putting in wood. And after 250 degrees centigrade, we would start putting wood on what is called on the grate. Of course, the pots were in this chamber, and we would be playing around with air from all around the sides and the front bottom hole to gain temperature and gain heat in the kiln. So I think that at that time, I was extremely curious as to what is inside that chamber. But, you know, I had to wait until I built two different kilns, two kilns of the same design at different places, where I gathered you know, the understanding of what are the things that are inside the kiln chamber, you know, next to the bag walls, and what's happening in the firebox. So when I built this kiln, I understood why we have gaps in which places in the bag wall, and what are the holes and the gaps in the lower part, what the firebox is. So, the openings between the bricks and the grate, and I started to understand what is expansion joint, because the brick expands with heat, and how the fire goes around the floor of the chamber to then get inside the chamber to heat the pots. And I'll go back to this image where the fire rises from the side and then goes down into the flue hole. Now, if there was no bag wall, the fire would just basically scoot into the flue hole very easily. And I'll be showing more diagrams as we proceed in the presentation. So how does fire work? Like, what are the things that are needed for heat to be created? There are three basic things. That is air, which of course is available all around us. We exist on air, and it has oxygen, which is needed for the fire. We need fuel, and fuel can be of many different kinds. And the third thing we need is heat, because if you have tried lighting a fire, for bonfire, or lighting a wood kiln with, small pieces of wood, if you light it, there are many times it just extinguishes and it becomes smoky, It needs heat. It needs a little bit of hot temperature for it to then create a chain reaction, which makes the fire. So there are three things: oxygen, fuel, and heat, which creates a chemical chain reaction for fire to happen. And when we are working with the kiln, then all these three things are really important, and the understanding of it is important for our work. So now that we know the triangle of fire, we will go over the fuel part, because, as I mentioned, that we have air everywhere, we have oxygen everywhere. Heat will be generated by the fire itself. Then is fuel. Now, fuel are of so many different types and kinds. I have put first on the list wood, because I like to wood fire, and it's a renewable energy source. We can grow it ourselves. And it was used by people from all different regions of the world to create fire, to create pots, to keep themselves warm. Next is biogas, which is another ecologically sustainable fuel, which could be cow dung, renewable fuel produced by breaking down organic matter, such as food scraps or mammal waste. And there are quite a few industries which are using biogas, not only in ceramics. Hopefully in ceramics, we are able to create a system to be able to use that. Gas, of course, the butane gas that we get in gas cylinders that we use for firing. It is a clean burning fossil fuel. The only thing is that it has been created in the formation of Earth over millennium years. So it remains to be, it's going to get exhausted over a period of time. And so is coal, which is mined, and it cannot be renewed. But all these are fuels that can be used for creating heat and firing kilns. So moving along, kiln. I think that the basic definition in my mind of a kiln is that it is basically a chamber which withholds heat for a particular duration of time. whichever fuel we use, that is what we are looking for. We are looking for a place where we can, a space in which we can put our pots and it can hold the heat so that our clay can vitrify and become, get the molecular structure of granite, which happens in millennium years on the earth. We do it mechanically in our kilns. So I think I thought very simply to jump in to electric kilns, which are basically a simple chamber which are lined with electrical conduits. And for the electric kiln, one could be producing the electricity in many different manners, whether it's hydroelectric, whether it's coal, whether it's solar for that matter. Hoping that we'll have solar energy more prevalently present all across the world. Electric kilns are usually plugged onto a 15 ampere volt plug, and you can fire your work with that. And these electrical conduits radiate heat. So that's what you can use for vitrifying your clay. Surface decoration, most people in electric kilns, using electric kilns, do surface decoration before they put the work in the kiln. So I have one work, just to give you an example, that I fired this in an electric kiln to cone 6, which is 1200 degrees centigrade. And I made a list of people whom I know who create amazing work in using electric kilns. And as I mentioned, that they do a lot of decoration, surface decoration, before the pot goes into the kiln. So yeah, that's about the first one. When we get into understanding gas kilns or wood kilns, where we are using gas or wood as fuel, the chamber will need to have a place where the fire enters the chamber and a place where the fire exits the chamber. So here are the 3 different types of kilns, different styles, or dependent on how the fire is moving inside the chamber of the kiln. So the left-hand side most is a cross draft, where the fire enters from one side and it travels in the chamber and exits on the other side. In a downdraft kiln, the fire enters from one side, it rises up, and it has to turn down to get into the flue hole and go through the chimney. So because the fire has to travel downwards and back into the flue, we call it downdraft. Though there is an overlap between the cross draft and the downdraft kilns, and you will see several kiln designs where that is evidently present, and then there are some that are clearly downdraft kilns. And we'll talk about it as we proceed in the presentation. Lastly, there are kilns which are just a structure, and the heat enters from bottom or closer to the ground and goes up and out of the chamber, it being called updraft kiln. Moving along, the first kiln that I said I fired many, many times, and I understood, oh, no, I'm just going to jump to the gas kiln that I built at my Earth Art Pottery in Pondicherry, and it's a downdraft kiln. It was essentially 2 burners having the heat come in from right next to the chimney. It would heat up the chamber, like rise in the chamber, go down into the flue hole, and then out through the chimney. So this is an 8 cubic feet gas kiln, which I designed and built. And I created a small sketch of essentially what is in there, which is an 8 cubic feet chamber with burner ports on the back and the flue right in the center of it. The fire rises and goes back into the flue, and this is the side view of the kiln. Some images of the interior, and in this one, because I was making various sizes of sculptures, I kept the bag wall loose, which means that if I was putting one big sculpture in here, I had much taller bag wall for the heat to rise before it went down into the flue hole. With the kiln, where I have more densely packed shelves and pieces, I had more space left in the bag wall for the heat to come into the chamber.